Welcome to the sleep paralysis tapes. Settle into the dark, pull the covers close, and let the heavy silence fill your room. Tonight, we descend into chilling tales of the unexplained. Before the screen fades to pitch black, I invite you to become part of this archive. If you have your own terrifying encounters, please contact me and I will narrate your story in a future tape. If these shadows bring you comfort, please like, subscribe, and tap the bell. Now, close your eyes. Do not look at the foot of your bed. Just listen and let us begin. Michael Vance's world was made of humming servers and fluorescent lights. For 15 years, he'd been the senior systems administrator for Granite State Assurance in their Manchester office. The building was a 1978 monument to beige, a place where the air always tasted vaguely of dust and recycled coffee. His days were a liturgy of routine, ticket queues, password resets, the soft click of a keyboard in a quiet, carpeted cubicle farm. It was deeply, profoundly boring. And he preferred it that way. Boredom in his line of work was safety. It meant nothing was broken in a way that couldn't be fixed. The first ticket appeared on a Tuesday afternoon in late October. It was just another line in the queue. Ticket number 1473. User, Jwilson at company.com. Subject, payroll system login. Password, reset, request. Michael almost clicked through it without a thought. That was the muscle memory. But his hand paused. The payroll system, not the new cloud-based portal they'd migrated to 2 years prior. The old one. The legacy system that ran on a virtual machine he personally decommissioned 18 months ago. It hadn't been called payroll system in half a decade. The internal name was GS Pay, a clunky Java thing nobody missed. A flicker of annoyance. Probably some new hire in accounting heard an old-timer mention it and tried to log in out of curiosity. He opened the user's profile in Active Directory. John Wilson. Account disabled. Termination date, May 17th, 2019. Laid off in the restructuring. 5 years gone. Michael sighed. A low, tired sound in the empty office. He leaned back in his chair. A glitch. It had to be. Sometimes, when they did batch updates to the employee database, old records could hiccup. A disabled account might still have a stale session cookie somewhere, triggering an automated help desk email. It happened. Not often, but it happened. He closed the ticket with a standard resolution note. User account disabled. No action required. He didn't think about the fact that the ticket hadn't been auto-generated. It had been submitted manually through the web portal. The system glitch explanation was cleaner, more comfortable. It let the boredom return. The second ticket came 3 days later at 6:14 p.m. After hours. Michael saw it the next morning. Same user, Jwilson. Subject, VPN credentials, legacy client access. That gave him a longer pause. The legacy client, VPN tunnel, had been shut down in early 2020. It was for a specific failed project they didn't talk about anymore. Project Phoenix. Another thing no new hire would know. The request was written in the proper, slightly formal tone the old-timers used. Please reset credentials for the Phoenix Project tunnel. Need to pull final reports. A prank, then. It had to be. Someone from the old guard, maybe an actuarial who remembered John Wilson and the Phoenix Project, having a laugh at the IT department's expense, a bored colleague with too much institutional knowledge. Michael felt a thin wire of irritation tighten behind his eyes. He hated office pranks. They were never funny and they always made more work for him. He checked the ticket metadata. Submitted from IP address 10.unt.127. He ran a lookup. That was the general office subnet. A dynamic address. It could be any computer in the building that had been left on, or someone who'd remoted in. See? A logical explanation. Annoying, but logical. He closed this ticket too, with a slightly sharper note. Request invalid. Project Phoenix and associated systems are decommissioned. User account is disabled. Ticket closed. He almost typed, "Find a better hobby," but deleted it. Professionalism was part of the routine, part of the safety. He swiveled his chair, looked out over the sea of gray cubicles empty in the early morning light. The building was quiet, just the hum of the HVAC, a sound so constant you only noticed it when it stopped. He told himself it was over. A glitch, then a prank. Case closed. And this is where, if you're listening, you know it's never that simple. A reasonable person, a person who wanted to keep that safe, boring world, would have left it there. Michael Vance tried to be that person, he really did. But the machine had other ideas, and the ghost in it was just getting started. The silence after the second ticket lasted for almost a week. That was long enough for Michael to convince himself it was over. He'd done his due diligence. He'd closed the loop. The safe, boring rhythm of the server room hum reasserted itself. And then, on the following Tuesday, at 6:02 p.m., the notification chimed on his phone. He was at home, stirring pasta. He looked at his phone. Ticket number 11481. User, J. Wilson. Subject, Project Phoenix Archive. LTO tape retrieval. His hand went still. The water bubbled pointlessly on the stove. LTO tapes. Linear tape. Open. They'd used those for the Phoenix Project backups. Heavy, black cartridges that whirred and clicked in a dedicated drive. They'd been sent to off-site storage in 2019. Then, according to the asset disposal log, they'd been degaussed and destroyed in 2021. The request was specific. Need to verify the final dataset on tape serial GSAPX-1147. Can you confirm its location in the Iron Mountain Manifest? Michael put the spoon down. The annoyance was gone. In its place was a cold, prickling focus. This wasn't a prank about a password. This was a query about a physical object, a specific serial number, from a project that had been a corporate ghost for years. A new hire wouldn't know what an LTO tape was, let alone the filing system for them. He went back to the office the next morning, early, in the dark. The cubicle farm was a landscape of shadows. He didn't turn on the overhead lights. Just the glow of his monitors. He dove into the logs this time, the real ones. The application logs for the ticketing system itself. And this is where the first clean, logical explanation cracked. The tickets were being created. They were real entries in the database. But the logs showed they were being submitted through the standard employee web portal, the same one everyone used. Except there was no source IP address logged, no session ID, no user agent string. It was as if the ticket simply manifested in the system, a form submitted from a computer that didn't exist on the network. He checked the firewall logs, the proxy logs. Nothing. No traffic from an internal machine matching the ticket timestamps. No traffic from outside the network either. A glitch in the matrix doesn't leave a void in the logs. It leaves garbage. Corrupted data. This was a perfect, clean absence, a shape cut out of reality. That's when the low-grade unease started, the kind that sits in your stomach cold and heavy. He needed a human check. He needed to know if the details were right. He found Frank Dolan in the break room. Frank was in actuarial. He'd been there since the 90s. A walking archive of corporate history, most of it depressing. "Frank," Michael said, trying to sound casual. "You remember Project Phoenix?" Frank sipped his terrible coffee. "The data lake thing that sank. Yeah. Why?" "Just cleaning up some old references. Do you remember? Were the backup tapes labeled with a GSAPX prefix before the rebrand?" Frank nodded slowly. "Yeah. Sure. Everything was GS back then. They added the A later. Made us relabel everything. A huge waste of time." He squinted. "Why?" "No reason," Michael said. "Just dotting I's." He walked back to his desk. The details were correct. Anachronistically, impossibly correct. This wasn't someone guessing. This was someone or something that remembered. The ticket was still open in his queue. He decided to engage. To break the protocol of silence, He typed a reply directly into the ticket's thread. John, this system and all associated media are decommissioned. The tapes were destroyed per retention policy in 2021. Please submit a request through your manager for any historical data needs. He hit update. The system spun for a second, then an error box popped up. Update failed. User session invalid. He frowned. Try it again. Same error. He opened a new browser, logged in fresh, went back to the ticket. The status had changed. It now read, in progress. And beneath his failed reply, a new note had appeared. Time stamped 1 minute prior. It read, disregard. Found workaround. Michael Vance stared at the words. The office hum seemed to sharpen, to become a high-pitched whine in his ears. The screen's glow felt suddenly clinical, like the light in an examination room. Found a workaround. There was no workaround. The system was gone. The tapes were dust. The account was a dead entry in a database. He leaned back. The ergonomic mesh chair didn't groan this time. The silence was total. He looked at the timestamp of the new note. 8:47 a.m. He looked at the clock on his screen. It was 8:48. The reply was 1 minute old, and in that minute, sitting in the dark office with the ghosts of 1,000 forgotten projects, Michael Vance felt the last vestige of his boring, safe world dissolve. This wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a prank. It was a conversation, and he had no idea who or what was on the other end. The third ticket came at 2:14 a.m. Michael wasn't sleeping anyway. He was at his kitchen table, his laptop open. He kept refreshing the help desk queue every few minutes. He'd told himself he was just monitoring, just being thorough. When it appeared, his breath caught. It felt like something cold had been placed directly under his ribs. Ticket number 11489. User, Juelson. Subject, access issue. Server room, B. But there was an attachment, a PNG file. His hand hovered over the trackpad. This is where a reasonable person would call security. They'd forward the ticket and walk away. Michael Vance was no longer a reasonable person. He clicked. The image loaded slowly. It was a screenshot of a computer desktop. The resolution was wrong, low and blocky. The background was the default Windows XP Bliss wallpaper. That hadn't been a standard image here since before the 2020 renovation. The taskbar showed a system clock. The time was 2:07 a.m. The date was October 28th, 2023, last night. But it was the open window on the screen that held him. It was a legacy server access request form, the one they'd replaced 5 years ago. The form was filled out for server room B. The requester field read, Wilson, J, GS, 4418. That was the old employee ID format. His eyes drifted to the top of the monitor in the picture. There was a reflection in the dark glass, a faint, warped reflection of the room behind the screen. He zoomed in. His blood turned to silt. The reflection showed a cubicle farm. Beige fabric walls. The old, bulky CRT monitors on every desk. And through a window in the background, the specific angular view of the parking garage from the third floor. The third floor that had been completely gutted and turned into the new sales bullpen in 2020. In the reflection, just visible was the outline of the old water cooler, the one with the persistent leak they'd finally replaced in 2019. This wasn't a fabricated image. The details were too granular, too pointless. The specific pattern of the ceiling tiles, the type of emergency exit sign they'd switched to LED models for. It was a photograph taken from inside a computer that shouldn't exist, in an office that hadn't looked like that for years. Taken last night. He didn't realize he'd stood up. He was pacing the tiny kitchen. The light was too bright. The silence was too complete. He needed a second pair of eyes. He needed someone to tell him he was crazy. He went back to the office. It was 3:30 a.m. The building was a tomb. Luis, the night security guard, was at his desk in the lobby. He was watching a soccer match on a tablet. He looked up, surprised. "Can't sleep, Mike?" Michael didn't answer. He just opened his laptop and turned it toward Luis. He pointed at the screenshot. "Have you ever seen this? Any of this? The old cubicles? That water cooler?" Luis leaned in. His friendly confusion slowly hardened into something else. He looked from the screen to Michael's face. "Man, where'd you get this?" "This is the old third floor. Before the renovation. I haven't seen that cooler in forever. It was attached to a ticket, submitted last night." Luis leaned back. He rubbed a hand over his mouth. "No. That's someone's messing with you. A Photoshop. The metadata says it was created at 2:07 a.m. today." The silence between them was different now. It absorbed the faint, distant hum of the building. Luis looked past Michael, down the dark hallway. "The building feels different at night since they did all that construction," he said, almost to himself. "Like, the old layout is still there, underneath. You hear things sometimes. Not noises, just the feeling of a phone ringing in a room that's empty." He shook his head. "I don't know, man. I just watched the cameras." Michael went back to his desk. The help desk portal was still open. The ticket with its impossible attachment sat at the top of the queue. Status: new. He didn't close it. It couldn't. The normal daytime noise of the system faded into a distant murmur. The only thing that was real was that one line in the queue. Ticket number 11489. He began to refresh every 30 seconds. Then, every 15, he was waiting for it, for the next one, for the entity on the other end of this impossible conversation to speak again. And as he sat there in the light from his monitor, in the silent office, a terrible understanding began to settle over him. This wasn't a hacker. This wasn't a glitch. This was a memory of the building etched into the wiring and the drywall and the forgotten cables. A memory that had learned how to use the ticketing system. A memory that was asking for access. He refreshed the page. The ticket status changed. It now read, "In progress." No one had touched it. He didn't run. That's what he told himself later. He walked quickly, but with a purpose. The fluorescent lights in the hallway buzzed like trapped insects. His own shadow leapt ahead of him, a long, thin stain on the carpet. He reached the lobby. Luis looked up from his tablet. His face shifted from boredom to concern in the glow of the security monitors. "Michael?" "What's wrong?" Michael leaned on the desk. The cold laminate bit into his palms. "The ticket. The one I showed you. It's a request for server room B access." Luis just blinked. "Check the logs," Michael said. His voice was tighter than he intended. "Every server room. The card readers. The cameras. Especially B. Right now. For the last 2 hours." A reasonable person would have called corporate security, would have filed an incident report. Michael was past reason. He was in the territory of proof. He needed Luis to tell him the logs were clean. That nothing had happened. That the world still made sense. Luis turned to his keyboard. His movements were slow and deliberate. He pulled up the access control system. He scrolled. He filtered. He double-checked. "Nothing, man," he said finally. "No entries for any server room door since 6:05 p.m. When the cleaning crew left. The log is blank." He switched to the live camera feed for server room B. It showed rows of black server racks under the constant sterile glow of the overhead LEDs. The room was empty. Still, a monument to orderly silence. "See?" Luis said. A forced smile was on his face. "It's a glitch in the ticket thing. Someone's messing with the system, not the room." Michael stared at the empty room. The tension in his shoulders didn't release. It just changed shape. from panic to a deep, cold unease. The request had been made. The system had said it was in progress, but the physical world had not complied. The ghost had hit a wall, a locked door. He felt a strange, hollow relief. "Okay," he said. "Okay. Thanks, Louise." He went home. He didn't sleep. He lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. The logic was a thin blanket, but he pulled it tight. The building's memory could manipulate data. It could leave echoes in a database, but it couldn't turn a doorknob. It couldn't interact with the real physical world. He almost believed it. At 2:07 a.m., his phone chimed. Not the soft ping of a new ticket. This was a sharper, urgent alert, a building management system notification. Alert, motion sensor in server room B. He was out of bed, the phone cold in his hand. He called Louis. It rang 4 times before he answered. "Louis." "The motion alert." Louis's voice was thin. "I see it. I'm looking at the camera right now." "And?" A pause. A breath over the line. "The room's empty, Michael." "Then it's a faulty sensor. A rat in the ceiling." "Maybe," Louis said, but his voice said no. "The lights are on." "What?" "The motion-activated lights in the room. They're on. They turn on when they detect movement. The camera was in night vision mode because the main lights were off. But now the main lights are on. The camera switched back to color. I can see shadows. Long shadows from the server racks." Michael closed his eyes. The image was perfect in his mind. The empty, lit room, the long, still shadows, an audience of machines watching nothing. "Go check," Michael whispered. "I'm not going in there, man," Louis said. There was no shame in it, just a flat human fear. Protocol says I watch the feed. I'm watching. It's empty. Then another alert chimed on Michael's phone. And another. A cascade. A cascade. Alert. Environmental. Server room B. Temperature deviation. Alert. Environmental. Server room B. Rapid cooling. He opened the environmental monitoring dashboard. The graph for server room B was a steep, jagged cliff. At 2:05 a.m., the temperature had been a steady 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Standard. At 2:07, the line began to plummet. By 2:22, it had bottomed out at 58 degrees. A 10-degree drop. In 15 minutes, localized to one room. "Louis," Michael said, his mouth dry. "The temperature in B is dropping. Fast." He heard the click of a keyboard on the other end of the line. A long, silent moment. "My system shows it too," Louis said very quietly. "It's reading 58 degrees. But, Michael, the HVAC control log. It shows no active cooling command for that zone." "None. The system isn't doing anything." "That's the detail that does it. The one that takes the last piece of the world away. The room was getting colder. The machines weren't making it cold. Something else was. Something that could ask for access. Something that could turn on the lights. And something that could draw the heat out of a sealed, windowless room." Michael stood in the dark of his own bedroom. He listened to the empty sound of Louise breathing on the phone. He was staring at his own reflection in the black window glass. Behind him, everything was normal. Quiet. But all he could see was that other room. The lit, empty server room. With its long, cold shadows. And he understood, with a certainty that felt like falling, that the ghost hadn't failed to unlock the door. It had never needed to. It was already inside. The morning after was a quiet corporate panic. It was all suits and forensic checklists, the sterile smell of fear. Granite State Assurance brought in a third-party security team called Blackwater Consulting. They arrived in a fleet of black sedans. Men and women in crisp, logo-less polos carried sleek cases of equipment. They were there to find a problem they could understand. A breach. A backdoor. A logic bomb. For 3 days, They tore the digital infrastructure apart. They imaged every server. They analyzed every packet that had crossed the network for the last 6 months. They interviewed Michael. Their questions were sharp and clinical, designed to trap a liar or an incompetent. He told them everything. The tickets, the screenshot, the code. They listened and typed. Their faces showed nothing. They found nothing. No malware, no unauthorized logins, no hidden admin accounts. The ticket creation logs remained a perfect, unsolvable blank. The PNG file's metadata was self-consistent. It pointed to a time and date that simply couldn't be. As one lead auditor said, it was as if the data packet materialized inside the database buffer. There was no point of origin. They treated the physical event the same way, like a puzzle. They reviewed the security footage from that night. Michael watched it with them in a small, bright conference room. There it was. The timestamp read 2:06:58 a.m. Server room B, camera 3. The view was in grainy night vision green. The server racks were dark monoliths. 2:07:04. The overhead banks of LED lights flicked on all at once. The camera automatically adjusted. The screen flashed white for a second before settling into a harsh color view. The room was empty. Just the racks and the long, still shadows they cast. Nothing moved. The auditor next to Michael pulled up a second window. It was the environmental graph, a flat line at 68 degrees. Then, at the exact same second the lights came on, the line began to fall. A clean, steep dive. It bottomed out at 58. The motion sensor triggered the lights, the auditor said. His voice held only professional interest. The cooling event begins simultaneously. It's a textbook cascade. But the HVAC system didn't activate, Michael said. His own voice sounded hollow. We know, the auditor said. He didn't look away from the screen. The HVAC logs show no cooling command for that zone. The chillers were idle. The temperature in that room dropped 10 degrees in 15 minutes without any mechanical cause. We've had an HVAC specialist inspect the system. It's operating normally. He finally looked at Michael. It's an anomaly, unexplained. We've documented it. That was the word they used. Anomaly. It went into a report that was sealed and sent to legal. They rotated Michael's credentials. They gave him a new key card. They told him, politely, to take a few days off. When he came back, the office had the eerie calm of a cleaned-up crime scene. Nothing was out of place, but everything felt different. The hum of the servers in room B had a new quality to it. A lower, drier sound. And the chill. It was still there. Not the dramatic plunge from that night, but a permanent, subtle cold spot near the center of the room. The HVAC sensors read a steady 68, but you could feel it on your skin. A dry, bone-deep cool like the air in a tomb. He lasted 2 months. He'd sit at his desk and the ticketing system would ping. It was now upgraded to a new platform. His heart would stop for a second. It was never Jay Wilson. It was always something mundane. A printer jam. A password reset. But he couldn't stop looking. He'd find himself scrolling back through the old archived queue. It was in a read-only database they'd kept for compliance. He'd searched for ticket number 11489, the one with the attachment. It was gone. Purged. The entire queue from that period had been scrubbed in the data hygiene process that followed the audit. Officially, the incident never happened. There was no memo, no all-staff email. The story became a ghost itself, passed in whispers in the break room. Most people didn't believe it. They'd smile, nod, and change the subject. Michael gave his notice. He cited personal reasons. He took a fully remote job with a company in another state. He told himself it was for the better pay and the flexibility. On his last day, he went to clear out his desk. It was after hours. The office was quiet. He passed by the secured door to server room B. He stopped. He didn't swipe his card. He just looked through the reinforced glass window. The lights were on. The room was empty. Everything in perfect order. He was about to turn away when he saw it. On the floor, in the center aisle between the racks, right where the motion sensor had triggered. A faint, perfect circle on the tile. It was darker than the surrounding floor, almost damp looking, as if something very cold had been sitting there for a long, long time and had just recently been moved. He didn't go in to check. He didn't call Lewis. He walked back to his desk. He collected his box of belongings, a mug, a plant that had died months ago, a few technical manuals, and he left. He never logged into the Granite State Assurance Network again, but sometimes, late at night, when he's working on his own computer in his quiet home office, a notification will chime. An email. A calendar alert. And for a split second, his blood will turn to ice. He'll have to look. He'll have to be sure. And he always is. It's never a ticket. It's never from Jay Wilson. But the feeling lingers. The feeling that somewhere, in the silent, humming dark of a server room he doesn't work in anymore, a request is still pending, a case is still open, and the status he knows will forever read in progress. The tape has reached its end. I hope the stories tonight brought a pleasant chill to your spine as you drifted further into the dark. Thank you for braving the shadows here at the Sleep Paralysis tapes. If you are still awake, lying still in the quiet, remember to contact me with your own unsettling encounters so they can be added to our growing archive. As my voice fades away, let the silence of your room wrap around you completely. May your sleep be undisturbed, your doors remain locked, and your morning arrive safely. Until we open the tapes again, good night.